How do you recognize disrespect the moment it happens instead of after, when you've had a few minutes, hours to process it? Paying attention to your feelings. If a partner or friend says something that immediately makes your stomach sink, don't rationalize it right away and instead bring it up. You don't have to bring it up right away, but if it's still bothering you after an hour or so, you should. It hurt my feelings when you said I needed to start doing squats because my asterisk looks flat. Look at how they respond. If they're immediately apologetic, that's a good sign and likely a misunderstanding, off-the-cuff bad joke, or just poorly worded. People say dumb stuff sometimes, and if they're kind people, they won't invalidate you for feeling upset about it. Healthy relationships can handle talking about hurt feelings without it spiraling out of control and becoming a fight. If every time you bring up a valid concern a fight breaks out, it might be time to reevaluate the relationship or the way you communicate your concerns. If they're defensive, claim it's just a joke, or accuse you of being oversensitive, you should see if it's a developed pattern of behavior. Making excuses for their behavior should be a red flag. Ask them to repeat what they just said to you, even if you heard them correctly the first time. My go-to is, do you mind repeating what you just said? I don't think I heard all of that. Here's what years of experience has taught me. First, you are usually gonna catch them off guard, and more times than not they will try to change what they said to you. If they don't change up what was said, they will shrug it off with a never mind or something else like that. Little subtle things like that lets people know you are listening. Most people who disrespect others don't like to be challenged, and think their opinions are valid. Take your time. We don't have to react to things immediately. Let the moment hang in the air. See if they fill in the gap. Make eye contact. Ask a follow-up question. Oftentimes I find I've misunderstood something if I simply take a second for clarification. Wow, all of these suggestions are so good. As women, we have been conditioned to ignore what our gut says and act how we are supposed to. It takes a lot of practice to start hearing disrespect, and when we point it out it's quickly met with, well, you're taking it the wrong way, I didn't mean it like that, quit being so sensitive. Honestly, I started following some feminist, body positive, and activism pages on Instagram. It's helped me to feel validated in some of my own experiences. Practice. Learning to trust yourself first instead of assuming you're probably wrong or mistaken. It helps to share experiences with friends, too. It's much easier to recognize disrespect, misogyny as an objective third party, and that's practice. A good book I'm reading is Men Explain Things to Me, which is all about this stuff. There is also nothing wrong with asking for clarification if you feel a statement or question is loaded or rude. Also, nothing wrong with crying out of frustration. People will use it against you, of course, because people are awful, but know that the physiological response of choking up or tearing up is generally involuntary. It does not mean you are weak or stupid. It means your body has sensed danger and feels attacked somehow, and that's something to listen to. Having imaginary conversations with yourself can be helpful, too. Like practicing for an interview, but instead you imagine scenarios and practice some responses. Ooh, another great one is to look up congressional floor arguments and hearings. There are so many clips of congresswomen calling out their male colleagues for interrupting them or being patronizing. Maxine Waters, Reclaiming My Time, is off the top of my head, but there are a bunch. It's hard. Especially because this often happens during a more heated conversation, and in those kinds of conversations our brains are not listening as much and instead waiting, planning the next thing to say. I haven't figured out how to not do that when I'm pissed, but I think that's the reason we think back later and realize that certain stuff was said. I think experience helps. In the past, when a guy ignored my calls but was all over Insta and Snap, that was because he was not interested in me and was all over other girls. So, now when I encounter that, I get a bad feeling in my stomach because I've seen, this is why he's ignoring me. This is hard to answer. I kind of had to train myself to do this because I grew up in a household where my feelings weren't valued. Dad was abusive and my mother, though she is a good person with good intentions, she was a god-awful mother. Also grew up in a small conservative Protestant town and the boys all felt like disrespecting women was a funny joke, and when we got our feelings hurt the common reaction was a whiny voice that said, "Oh my god, I was just kidding. You're so overly sensitive. Are you on your period again? Jesus Christ." I wish I was exaggerating. When I met my husband, he taught me that if something hurts my feelings it means something is wrong. At first I kind of overtuned myself and I did become oversensitive. I started reacting immediately and telling people when something hurt my feelings, made me mad, made me uncomfortable. I did tend to overreact because I had been bottling up and ignoring my feelings for so many years. And naturally, yes, many people were surprised, upset, confused. But that's just because I had been hiding my true self under all these ridiculous societal expectations, and I was starting to be honest. I lost a few friends, but it was a worthy sacrifice. Most of them were very toxic. But eventually, with practice, I leveled out. Became a much better communicator, and ultimately I would do it again because my previous self was just slowly dying inside and it was very unhealthy. It takes a lot of practice, honestly, both in recognizing how you feel and why, and in terms of being able to be an assertive communicator. If either of those things are lacking, you won't be able to immediately recognize and shoot down disrespect. Know that it gets easier. I'm still working on consciously developing the habit of listening to and trusting my own instincts, inside and outside of my interactions with others, for situations like these. Therapy has helped tremendously, but it's definitely a skill that takes a lifetime. In the meantime, I'd honestly recommend that, when safe and/or possible, you outright ask the person or people to repeat or further explain what they just said or did that came across as disrespectful. In my experience, 9/10 people cannot handle direct confrontation like this, especially from a woman. If they are even a little guilty, they will either try to change, avoid the subject, or will somehow soften what they said or did, if not outright apologize just to get out of the conversation, any of which lets you know you were right to suspect they may have been disrespecting you. Read up on signs of abuse. Commit them to memory so when it happens you're like, oh, red flag. Also try to be self-aware of your emotions and ask yourself why you are feeling the way you're feeling. If answering it makes me uncomfortable and unnatural, I usually realize something is disrespectful. If it was funny banter or a joke, I would naturally banter back and find it funny, but if I have to think about what to answer because I don't want to cause a scene or something, I'm usually able to pinpoint that it was a disrespectful comment in the first place. I tend to gauge the person's response pretty quickly, like they'll insult me, and then either there will be a pause in the conversation, like they're waiting for my defense, or they get this waiting look with kind of a, do you have the spine to defend yourself, tone on their face. Additionally, if my heart goes, ouch, I tend to call people out real fast for clarification. It never hurts to ask someone if they meant to insult you. Well, I mean, they can be **** about the whole thing, but then at least I'm not going, maybe it was just me? What was that? Okay, maybe I'm overthinking it, is recognition. We're just too used to brushing it off, and when we find that we can't and keep dwelling on it, the more wrong it sounds. You don't need to articulate the perfect comeback or even be able to fully explain why you're feeling that way. Just spit out the feeling, that didn't feel good, when it hits you. I have an instant feeling of stomach sinking in or immediate elevated heart rate, anger. To get out of the situation that is setting in takes time, because I can't just ****ck them, away. The awareness itself is a good feeling to have, since then you can properly prepare exit strategies or diplomatic comebacks, or even to contain yourself, because sometimes the **** are our superiors. Search for your instincts and uncover your true feelings. Practice and read Why Does He Do That by Lundy Bancroft. It applies to all humans, not just those portrayed.